All right, hi everybody. I'm Evan Phoenix. I'm here with our beloved Matz. How are you today, Matz?
Great, thank you.
How,
It's a bit chilly here.
yeah, I was going to ask how's the weather? You're usually wherever we would be, and it would be cold normally if we were in the U.S. during for RubyConf, but it's cold at your house too.
Yeah, this time of the season, yes.
Yeah. And how have you been the last few months with coronavirus and everything? Everything okay?
Oh, yeah, we are very fine. The many events and conferences are canceled, or went online, so that it's kind of I miss some communication between the users, but the other than that, I'm pretty happy. So that yeah, actually I hate flying over. So that
Yeah,
yeah,
but I remember you've mentioned that before. We're always very thankful you come, but on the other hand, you do get to spend all this extra time at home. It's sort of the silver lining, right? So
yeah,
um
much better.
so
It does sense.
yeah. We're recording this before the conference, obviously. And thank you. You sent me in your keynote. I got to watch it before we did this, so I could talk to you about what was in the keynote as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought we would just kind of just jump in with a couple of things from the keynote that we could talk about. So Ruby 3 sounds like it's going well, on
Yes,
track.
basically.
Yeah, but on you basically good. I did notice that one of the questions I wrote down towards the end, I think you were talking about how you still has work to do, the release. You're still doing work. Um, but I thought could maybe you could answer a question. It seems like one of the things that you and the core team have started doing is kind of evolving and adding features through more like experimental features that kind of get you start off experimental and in a couple of releases they're stabilized rather than trying to do a big feature and have it be production ready at the beginning. Is that have you talked about that with the team? Does that make sense?
Uh, yeah, it makes sense. Because uh, if we could design everything right at the beginning, that's
Yeah.
okay. And yeah, for the when the Ruby was very, young, so
Hmm.
that it's okay. It's all decision was were up to me, and
Yeah.
that is okay. But these days, the fundamental features are already implemented in the Ruby, so
Hmm.
that this kind of the some kind of the controversial features, or maybe some kind of the very delicate and complicated features, so that uh, we are not sure we could design them right at the first moment, so that we need to make some kind of experiment
Hmm.
for and then the used by the users so that they can interact and improve. You know the when Ruby has very few smaller community,
Hmm.
it's okay to throw them away. Okay, it was mistake. It was mistake. We cancel them,
Yeah.
and but now we have millions of users and the tens of thousands of Ruby programs. That if I cancel something in the past, so that all I could hear the scream all over the world. that's 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 kind of insane. So
Yeah.
that's why we you know improved our process of the migrating new features. Like you know the one release every year is one of them, and then experimental feature is the other.
Hmm. Very nice. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very useful. I one thing I've always seen, and I think you have seen this before, is it's very difficult to get users to try beta software. They just don't want to bother. They want to try the real thing and then they give you the results. So sometimes you have to just give them the features and say, okay, try them and let me know because they won't try them in beta form ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always
Yeah,
interesting.
we still released some several betas and previews,
Mm-hmm.
but very few people try them.
Right, right.
But yeah, we somehow we forced to make experimental features.
Yeah, I think it's worked well. Um, I think the maybe the first one I can think of was when, I feel like the Ruby VM and the bytecode functions were experimental. Are they even? They
Mhm.
might still be experimental for a very long
It's
time.
they
So
are
yeah,
still experimental.
yeah. So and people still build stuff with that. So I think it has worked out. Um, so I thought we could jump into a little discussion of performance. It seems like, you and the team want to address Ruby performance at a few different ways. I think that it's interesting um, to see a language designer say, well, yeah, we better do better on the micro benchmarks because I'm glad that you said it because it is a way that users test things. Um, but we
Yeah,
language designers
irony.
usually want to say like, oh, who cares about micro benchmarks? But it was very nice. It was very nice to see you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I hate my micro benchmarks for long time
Yeah.
because of the it's nothing nothing to do with the real world application.
Yep.
But people make decision on top of the micro benchmarks,
Yeah.
even though they so that even though it's not really related to the real world performance. So that okay, people make decisions on something, so
Mhm.
we have to address that.
Yep. Yeah.
So that yeah, probably the PHP people consider similar things because we see the PHP 8 introducing JIT compiler,
Yeah.
so that would not help the improvement performance of the web application.
hmm Yeah, Fibonacci gets faster all the time, so
Yeah,
yeah, there's all those Fibonacci web services out there that people implement with their languages. So
yeah.
um, I thought it was very interesting to see the new async stuff with hooking into the IO scheduler.
Mhm.
Is how have Has there been much discussion of how that works with C extensions? I know that fibers and C extensions can be a little strange sometimes.
Yeah, basically, the C Ruby fibers can do well with uh, the fibers right now
Mhm.
because of the Samuel Williams wrote
Mhm.
some kind of
Yep.
the assembly code to
Yeah.
say that have the independent the C stack for the each fibers. So that
Mm.
for that kind of the hack, so the most of the cases
Oh,
on
good.
the major CPU and the major operating systems, so the fiber performance is well enough, and as they work well with the C extension. So that
Oh, good.
basically you don't have to worry about the
Oh,
mixture of the C extension.
that's great. That's excellent to hear because I think that was one thing that I've always it can be hard to make work right. It's great to hear that he stopped in with that code
Yeah.
to make it work. Great.
It's all from the effort from the Samuel Williams. Thanks. Yeah.
Excellent. That's awesome. Um, So looking at kind of two of I know that Koichi is giving a talk about Raptor, so I will save that for if we have time, we could talk about that. I will move on to other things. I think that one of the things that people will probably have questions about looking at watching your keynote is how much the discussions of Ruby evolving. And I think every year someone asks like, are you going to add these functional features? Are you going to add these functional features to Ruby? And I think
Mhm.
that those people will probably be pleasantly surprised this year with some really interesting sort of functional features. I thought that just like little things like the name parameters or the number underscore one underscore two felt like almost like a very scheme-esque sort of feature almost in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is there any well, looking at that kind of thing, is there any have you been playing with that code? Did you write some example programs to get an idea of like, oh, this feels nice and that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, you know that I'm a programming language geek, so that
Yeah.
I love all the programming languages, so that, as like you.
Hmm.
And then so that I investigated the all major programming language and the new coming programming languages, and the recently the functional programming language like Haskell or Scala and Clojures, and even Erlang and Elixir are source of my inspiration. So
Hmm.
that I want to improve Ruby, of course, in compatible way,
Hmm.
but I think you know my goal is the to reduce the burden of the programming and
Hmm.
increase the joy of programming.
Sure.
So to achieve that, I like to steal ideas from ideas and syntax from other languages. Then the recently the functional programming language the source of ideas.
Hmm.
But
Have you
I'm not going to make Ruby functional programming. The-
But I think it's interesting, like the just what you've been able to pick and choose. Was there one that got taken out? Was there a pipe operator or something that was tried and then taken out at one point in
yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
in the
Last year.
last year? Okay. And was that just that it just didn't feel right, or like it'd be interesting to hear what
Mm.
what kind of went into that.
The pipe operator is kind of the controversial things, and I thought it was good idea, and I modified it to fit into the Ruby object-oriented way. But some people expect the pipe operators as it is in Elixir language because pipe operator in Elixir is very essential.
Hmm.
Or some other people expect the pipe operator in OCaml or whatever other
Mm.
language. So that the basic concept is similar,
Hmm.
but the exact actual behavior is different. So that difference, I thought that difference was trivial, so
Hmm.
that unacceptable. But it's not for the many people, especially for the Elixir users. There are many people who use the Ruby and Elixir at the same time. So
Hmm.
that you know that was I okay. I admit I estimated wrong. So that
It's
you
okay.
know
Yeah.
yeah, the language design is highly dependent on the common sense and the background.
Hmm.
So if I estimated the community background wrong, so that I withdraw the idea, and then maybe we have some time to discuss, and then maybe sometime in the future the idea might be revisit, but not for this time.
I think that's great to hear. I always found it very refreshing to see you and the core team add features and try them out and then take them away sometimes if it didn't make sense. And I mean, it's hard to write a language, as you know. And so I always thought it was good that you would try those things, even if sometimes you have to just remove them because they don't work. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, for example, last year we introduced the one-line pattern matching using the keyword in,
Hmm.
but we abandoned.
Mm.
But instead, we introduced the hash rocket
Yeah, the arrow. Yeah, yeah.
as
Yeah,
the one-line pattern matching.
yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at your examples, and it uses the multi-line one uses case, but with in instead of when, I guess. Is that the difference?
Uh, yeah, no, what? Well, for pattern matching, we
Yeah,
used in instead of when.
yeah.
Yes.
And can you mix them? Can you have some whens and some ins in the same case?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
you cannot
I
mix.
I did find I did, I think one of the things when I first started doing Ruby quite a while ago, um, that was interesting
Quite a
was,
lot of-
yeah, it was the destructuring. I think that, the splat operator, the ability to splat and to destructure things, and it's really interesting to see the pattern matching and being able to do the similar sort of destructuring. Did I even see that you have destructuring from within like a hash or from within an object?
Using pattern matching, you can do that.
Yeah, so you could say like, I want to take an object and I want the A element and the B element from this thing and extract them into a local or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's a lot of fun. I think um, does that protocol, is there a protocol that the objects will be able to implement? So for instance, like does it need to do like with when you implement the triple equals in order to have it work? Um,
Mm-hmm.
does an object have to do something special to be a part of pattern matching? Uh,
Yeah, yes. The object needs to have the deconstruct method,
okay.
deconstruct hash method to
Hmm.
match with the hash pattern,
Ah,
and a
okay.
deconstruct method to match with the array pattern, array pattern.
Okay. And so then it can, and that, what is, does that just return a hash? And then the idea is an object would,
Yeah,
like,
deconstruct hash pattern should
ah,
return hash.
okay, gotcha. I mean, that's great because then people can do all kinds of interesting things of passing objects in, what kind of objects you want to do. So, I mean, that's what, one of the one of the I've always loved about Ruby is the coercion protocols were so at the very bottom layer of things. So it was so easy oh, it's almost too easy to make a mess sometimes. Go imp,
Sometimes.
go implement two-stir on something that's really not a string and watch everything kind of collapse on you, and all kinds of interesting things. But it's great to hear that pattern matching is still inside there too. Um, let's talk about static types. We're gonna talk about static
Yeah,
types.
yeah.
So you've obviously we've talked about them at many RubyConfs. How many years do you think it's been that been thinking about adding static types in some form to Ruby now? A while?
A
10
while.
years? 10 years maybe more?
10 years maybe. And yeah, my original idea is even before Ruby. So
Mm,
kind of the static typing based on the interface or something like that.
hmm.
But it's at that time, say early 90s. The idea was too early, so that I
Yeah.
abandoned the idea for a long, long time. Maybe I was thinking about, I don't know, yeah, at least more than 10 years.
Yeah. You brought up an interesting thought that I had written down, which is I haven't used the RBS stuff at all yet, and I'm wondering, as I was looking at the examples, it was mostly about concrete types. It was mostly like this thing returns a string or a number.
Mhm.
Does it have support for interface types? Does it have support to say, hey, this can return something that implements two-stir? It doesn't have to be a
Yeah, yeah.
string.
Actually, the current the type profiler is not smart enough to extract the interface
That
nor
makes
the
sense.
parameterized type or generic type one.
Hmm.
But you can write down the interface and the parameterized type in the signature. So
Ah,
that
okay.
if you write down your signature by hand, you can have the generic types and the interface or
Ah,
the duck typing or something like that, so
hmm.
that you don't have to worry about that. Because if you don't have that, that would restrict
Oh, yeah.
the flexibility of Ruby very much, very much. So that
Yeah.
I and yeah, my the biggest concern of mine was that if I introduce some kind of these concrete static typing to the language, the
Hmm.
whole community would move on to the static type camp. And
Yeah.
that would hinder the language atmosphere a lot. So that I don't want that. So that if you want to stay in the dynamic camp or flexibility, you can do that, and I encourage you to do that. But if we want to check some, the basic uh, static typing,
Hmm.
for the foolproof or the early error detection, so that
Hmm.
you can do that with the type prof and the signature.
Yeah. Um, it feels like the adding of the, 'cause, I mean, the the idea is to check. It's fine.
Excuse me,
Oh, it's fine.
my cat is going out.
Oh, that's no problem. Mine is sitting over here on the bed. So, um, it it seems like it makes sense to use the type signatures in like a test or a CI kind of place. Is that the main idea? Is that you would say I'm going to run my tests with the type signatures turned on, or I'm going to run maybe in a development mode with the type signatures
Mhm.
turned on. Is that the idea?
Yeah, basically, the type prof use the technique needs the abstract interpretation, which is the which requires the running program, all top to bottom. So that you need to have some kind of a test program or application to execute the abstract interpretation. So
Gotcha.
that the basic workflow should be that you write your programs and you write your test code. You run the type prof over your test code, run through your library or gems or something like that. And then you can find the contradiction toward the existing signature
Hmm.
or having the wrong code graph, so
Hmm.
that you can warn you can be you will be warned by the type profiler.
Hmm.
Then the type profiler will generate the signature for your application. And then if you are not satisfied with the signature generated because of you have the interface, or you maybe have the generic type in your library, so that you can update the signature generated,
Hmm.
so that you will have the more precise static typing from the next iteration.
Hmm. I think it's nice, the idea hopefully is that I think, and you mentioned that hopefully people would distribute the files with their gems and then we'd be able to
Mhm.
tie in with it. But it feels like you can probably at the beginning, I'm thinking about day one, typeprof can be just pointed at a gem and it can generate just the generic output for a particular gem just to get people going, I presume, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, so, there are a few other sort of tools in the same space that have come out in the last couple of years. Was there a way in which you decided which of these tools you wanted to take on, or is it, just kind of the maybe the discussion of, I know there's one uh, from Stripe, I think, and there's a couple of
Yeah, yeah.
other ones. Maybe you just talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. The I think in the future, Solvay or
Mm, yep, sorbet.
its descendant would be you know the default will be default. You
Hmm.
know the Sobe is most performant and a usable approach. Uh, we have a little bit, you know, difference in the policy because in Sobe, so the people add some kind of the notation in the code, not in the signature, not
Hmm.
only the signature. And then the current Sobe use the DSL type Ruby code to denote the types, but
Hmm.
the I think there are the project to migrate the Solvay DSL to the resignature is on the way, so that I don't worry about that. But
Okay.
Solvay code uh, adding Solvay annotation in the user's code is I don't like the approach, but you know but right now I don't have any other workaround, so that
Sure. Sure. That's a good segue into, I think, what would probably be our last question
Mhm.
or so. I know that you talked a lot about, and this goes into the type tools, which is it's really a tooling in kind of ecosystem for the static
Mhm.
typing. and discussions about that you want more of more tools, and it sounded like you wanted the core team was going to be working on these sorts of tools. I think you mentioned like type checking and formatting and the language server and tuning tools and stuff like that. Do you want there to be sort of official versions, like Ruby core versions of all of those tools eventually?
Probably I don't. I'm not going to make a official version of
Okay.
the tooling, but I encourage the existing tools to adopt our policy and the way, and I encourage them. I even try to fund them through the Ruby Association and the
Mm-hmm.
Ruby Central, the fund,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can use more information from the signatures, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can have the better uh, help or to the users in the
Sure.
environment like IDE or editors.
So it sounds like what you kind of want is just, and correct me if I'm wrong, some more, figure out a way to collaborate more with all of the people who want to build those tools so that you're building them in ways that they complement each other.
Yeah. That's what we try to.
Okay. I think we only have a minute or two left here. I think I would be, some people would be mad if I didn't ask you this question, but I don't have to because your keynote already does it. The question was going to be, when is Ruby getting macros? And now I know the answer to that question, which is as soon as your crazy idea is implemented. I think people were very excited to see that that made it in there. I understand it's a very crazy idea. It was exciting. I think you mentioned that you wanted in your crazy idea thought of it. It would require some new syntax in order to do some sort of array or some AST expansions and contractions and stuff like that. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, but that those crazy ideas pop up in my mind last minute. I prepare the slides, so that this no detail, no concrete ideas, and then yeah, in
It
the
was you
past
had a lot of
maybe
detail. You had a lot of detail for a last minute idea, though. There was a lot of there. So
yeah, thank you. So yeah, in the past, my crazy ideas, just the maybe half or yeah, half of my crazy ideas are dropped and abandoned. So that don't expect too much.
um, I think the last question I want to ask is, you know, I know that the Samuel brought some of the async stuff. Is there and it sounds like you want to get more people sort of collaborating. Is the right way to get involved with the Ruby core team still the sort of the Redmine and those sorts of things? Is there any new ways that people can get involved to start helping you work on Ruby?
The Ruby Mine is our official starting point, so
Okay.
that you have ideas the about to the Red Mine, so that
Hmm. Okay.
we pick the ideas and then we can collaborate with some other working group or something like that. For example, the Samuel and I and some other people in the core form the async IO the user working group, or
Hmm.
and we heavily discuss about implementation, the method names, and something like that to implement the ideas.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah, I
yeah,
just,
we will come to some crazy ideas.
yeah, that's okay. I think I have submitted crazy ideas to the Ruby Mine before too. So, and none of them got implemented, which is not a problem at
Of
all.
course, but yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, you never know which ideas might come out that, whoa, this is actually something we want to do. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that in the past we have several crazy ideas. Some of them we cannot implement in the Ruby, but as the idea itself is pretty interesting, then so that they import it to the other language or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But the other language lovers, so that the idea itself is exciting for me. So that
Yeah.
yeah, I'm waiting for it.
Well, maybe someone will submit after seeing us today. Well,
Yeah,
I want to thank you for taking the time, and hopefully I will get to see you in person next year. And
yeah,
it was
situation will be improved.
yeah,
Should be improved.
it was great to see you and talk to you, and I will talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
See
bye-bye.
ya.